So to summarize what we have seen earlier, we actually started with the, an empty set, and we moved on to construct more numbers like natural numbers, integers, and rational numbers just by using an empty set. And then we saw how dense the irrational numbers are. Then we also saw how certain quantities in various scales such as continuum or microscopic scale um, are defined over some subset of rational numbers and not the whole set of real numbers actually. So and also how the quantities like derivative, continuity, which apply to the real numbers, which consist of irrational numbers, and in physical world we actually use these things to study a proper study the quantities that are defined only over a proper set of rational numbers. We saw all these stuff. Now then we moved on to PDEs, wherein we saw how integral curves act as solutions for a linear PDE. We then moved on to extending this to quasi-linear PDE through implicit function theorem. Then we also saw classification of PDEs, especially linear second order PDEs, and we saw how two real and distinct characteristics were formed for hyperbolic PDEs, and for parabolic PDEs we had one characteristic, and for elliptic PDEs we had imaginary characteristic. We actually did not have any real characteristic. So we saw all these last time. So now let's move on to hyperbolic PDE specifically. So we start with a wave equation. So this is the second order wave equation. This equation is actually linear because c squared is not a function of u. So u is our dependent variable, x and t are independent variables, position and time. So u is defined over x and t, and c is our constant, which belongs to the set of all real, which is any real number actually. So now x, the domain for x is from -infinity to infinity. It's not bounded. Same way, time is also not bounded. It starts from 0 and goes to infinity. So this is the problem that we have now. This is the way we formulate any physical problem. Like after modeling any system, you get some PDE or ODE, and you have an initial condition and domain. This is the way this is actually obtained after modeling any system. This is how you get a problem. Now, when you solve that problem, you find the physical variable. You find the values for u at every time and every time at every point in the domain. Like the domain is x. This is the domain. So at every point in the domain, you find the value for u at each and every x and t. So this is what you mean by solving any physical problem. So you are given an initial condition, which is in position and velocity. So now this is your problem. Now we already saw for a hyperbolic PDE, for any general hyperbolic PDE, I mean not general, a second order linear PDE, we had two real and distinct characteristics actually. So and then we transformed from xt domain to xi eta domain, and then we got this canonical form for the hyperbolic PDE. So and then we specifically took wave equation, which is the second order hyperbolic PDE, and then we tried to solve this. So we actually got this as the solution. So now phi here is our u there. So phi is now of some function of x plus 80 and some function of x minus 80. So this is the general form of the solution that we got last time. So now for constructing the D'Alembert solution, we take this general form as such. is this is the general form for u. So now substituting this general form into the initial conditions we had. So substituting it into the initial condition for position, we get this expression. And substituting into the initial condition for velocity, we get this. So this is actually a derivative. So we are trying to make it equivalent to 1. So we are actually integrating it over x. So we get this expression after integration. So now 1 and 2 are linear equations in f and g. So we can, these are algebraic equations. So we can solve them algebraically just by eliminating one variable and finding another. So now we have obtained some solutions for g of x and f of x. Now we know. Now we have already taken a general solution for u of x comma t, which is f of x minus ct plus g of x plus ct. So now substitute, we know the form of g of x and f of x. So replacing this g of x by g of x plus ct, you get this thing over here. Just by replacing this f of x by f of x plus ct and everything that is over x by x plus ct. You just replace that. And similarly for f of x to f of x minus ct, you actually change this to f of x minus ct and this thing to x minus ct. So you get an expression. So some terms get cancelled off and you get the solution actually. So this is your D'Alembert solution. Now if you notice, f of x and f of x minus ct and f of x plus ct are actually this, because this is the initial condition that we took. When we say f of x equals u of x comma 0, then it also means that f of x minus ct f of x minus ct is equal to u of x minus ct comma 0. Similarly for f of x plus ct and u of x plus ct comma 0. And also here, this g of s is velocity. So see, when we took g of x equals ut of x comma 0, when we have g of s, it means ut of s comma 0. So this is the D'Alembert solution now. So this is our D'Alembert solution. So now if you look at it, let's say you have a point, any point in xt plane. So let's call that point as x naught comma t naught. So now for this point, if you have to find the value of dependent variable u, it is actually from this point you are drawing two lines, x minus ct equals constant and x plus ct equals constant. If you extrapolate that to x-axis, you get the intercept x minus ct naught and x plus ct naught. So u at this point is equal to half of sum of u at this point and this point, plus again 1 by 2c of, when you integrate the integrate ut actually, when you integrate ut at all of these points and add it up. So actually the u at this point is the sum of is dependent on u at this point and u at this point, and also it's dependent on ut in all of these points. So this is what we are inferring from D'Alembert solution. So for any point in xt plane, you can draw characteristics like this, and you can find the intercepts in x-axis, so that you can get x minus ct naught and x plus ct naught. So that way you actually see the interval which modifies the value of u at xt. That is, this interval influences this value u. So now for this point u at x comma t, this interval is the domain of dependence. Actually, u at x comma t is dependent on this interval. When we notice this D'Alembert solution. That is what we obtain. So now going to range of influence. Let's construct some interval in the x-axis, that is this interval. Just consider this interval. Now let's say you have this point x comma t. Now if you draw characteristics, this point, you at this point is actually dependent only on this interval. It's not dependent on the interval that we considered, I. So also again, you consider some point over here. U at this point is actually dependent only on this interval. It's not dependent on the interval I. But if you construct some, if you consider some point x comma t here inside this range, so you have u at this point will actually be dependent on this interval. Some of the points some of the points in this interval which I marked in red belong to the interval I. So actually in that way the interval I, it somehow influences the way solutions are evaluated at x comma t, that is this point. So this interval I has some influence on this point. Similarly, if you have some point inside, interval I has some influence on this point. If you have here interval I, these points play a role. These points from interval I influence this x comma t. So now if you notice this for the interval I you have, it is for this big interval, this interval actually influences the points that are lying within this domain. If you go out of this domain, the points are only dependent on some interval outside this I, they are not dependent on some points of I. So this is what is known as the range of influence for I. It goes on up like this. So did you guys get it? Do you have any doubts or questions? Anything? Any doubts in domain of dependence and range of influence?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So now we have this is our D'Alembert solution. Now considering a special case of this solution, wherein the initial condition for velocity is 0. So basically this term goes off. That is, this term is 0. So we only have the first two terms. That is the terms in position variable, not on the velocity variable. So now this point u is actually dependent only on this point and this point. It is not even dependent on the whole of this interval anymore. It is only dependent on 2 points. So this is the special case. Using the special case, let's see an example. So you have a wave equation and you have the domain as mentioned earlier. Now you have the initial condition, which is 1 for x between 0 and 1 and 0 otherwise. So this is actually our initial condition. So this is our solution. This is our initial condition, sorry. So and ut is 0. So now let's see how to construct the solution for any time greater than 0. So let's construct the xt. Let's see how the characteristics are in the xt plane. So in the xt plane, you have the x-axis and t-axis, and you have written down the solutions. Initially the solutions are like this in the t plane, and now at any point you have two characteristics, x minus ct and x plus ct. So you draw those. This is x plus ct equals 0, and this line corresponds to x plus ct equals 0, and this line corresponds to x minus ct equals 0. These are the two characteristics point passing through this point, origin. And you have another other two characteristics, x plus ct equals 1 and x minus ct equals 1 passing through this point. So now if you look at other points, let's say if you consider some now now that you have drawn the characteristics, you are able to separate the whole xt plane into different regions. I mean upper half of the xt plane into different regions. So this region is 1 and this is 2 and this is 3 and this is 4. We call them as different regions, 5 and 6. So you have different regions. Now in these regions we can use the D'Alembert solution, which is this actually, to find the actual u of x comma t at in these different regions. So if you consider this region 1, that is this region, u of let's say you have some point x comma t in this region, and if you draw characteristics, this is x minus ct equals some constant, and this is x plus ct equals some constant. So this point u of x comma t is dependent only on these 2 points now. If you notice that both of these points u is 0 because of the initial condition. So we have half into 0 plus 0. Half comes from the D'Alembert solution itself, this half over here. So we have u equals 0. So in the whole of this region, in the whole of this region, u is 0. Similarly in other regions. In this region, if you take here, if you consider some point, say x comma t, here the solutions are going to be dependent on these 2 points, and both of these points have the value, have u as 1. So we have half into 1 plus 1, which is 1. Similarly here, if you draw something, it's going to be 0 on both these points, so you have 0 here. Now if you go to the top region, to the region 4, if you consider some point x comma t, now for this point the characteristics is, so this is your points. One point, this is x minus ct equals some constant, and this is x plus ct equals some constant. So u at x minus ct for this point gives 0, and for u at x plus ct for this point gives 1, because the characteristic actually comes down to here. So it's 0 plus 1. So we get 1 by 2. Similarly for, I'll remove so if you consider something over here, the characteristics will be like this. So if you have an xt here, so u at this point will depend on u at this point and u at this point, and both of them are 0. So you have half into 0 plus 0 as 0. Similarly, if you consider some point in this region, it will come here and 1 here. So this will give 1 and this will give 0. So you have 1 plus 0 as half. So this is how you find the solution in the whole of xt plane by using characteristics. This is not possible all the time. This can actually be done when the initial conditions are simple enough to, construct the characteristics in this way and divide the regions it's not possible to always divide the regions like this. So now, if you notice, now we have found some expression for all of these regions. So actually we have found the solution, but we are still attempting to visualize these solutions. Say at t equals 0, we have got a square wave, which is 1 at 1 in the region between 0 and 1. So now this is for at t equals 0. If you now so let me consider some line here. Actually at t equals 0, this is our solution. Now let's say we construct some line over here at say that is between, that is for t less than 1 by 2c. This point here is 1 by 2c. So for any t less than 1 by 2c, our solution will actually be 0 up till this region, and 1 by 2 in this region, and 1 in this region, 1 by 2 in this region, 0 again in this region. So that is what we have constructed. 0, 1 by 2, 1, 1 by 2, and again 0 in some region. So let's say you construct the same thing at say some t equals exactly 1 by 2c. So at this point, we'll only have u equals 0 in this region, u equals 1 by 2 in this whole region, and u equals 1 in this region. So that is what is the solution which we see at t equals 1 by 2c. And for any t greater than 1 by 2c, it's going to be 0 in this region, 1 by 2 in this region, 0 in this region, 1 by 2 again, 0 here. So that is what we have drawn over here. So and as time increases, this region, this 0 u equals 0 region gets widened. So if you notice, this region will keep widening over time after t greater than 1 by 2c. So these two waves will keep moving far and far, and this u equals 0 will be widening. So this is what is the solution for this special case, wherein velocity is 0 at time t equals 0. Now let's move on to another thing, another different problem, wherein the initial condition is sin x wave, that is u at x comma 0 is sin x. We again have the velocity as 0, so we can still use the same problem, same form. Well, it's actually half over here. It must be half, as we have seen from the D'Alembert solution. This is the D'Alembert solution that we had. So so now using some trigonometric formula over here, we'll get this expression. So it's actually sin x is preserved, and over time we get different values for different two cos t, different values for this cos t. So basically sin x is scaled by cos t at any time. So over time the profile for sin x doesn't change. That is, we don't have anything like sin x minus ct. If this is the case, sin x wave will move towards right and left accordingly. But here we only have sin x. Because of this combination, we finally got sin x. So this sin x is actually not going to move towards right or left, but it actually remains in the same position, but its magnitude gets amplified, or it gets scaled basically by cos t at different times. So if say this white curve is the sin x curve at time t equals 0, then at some different time the sin x frequency, the shape of the sin x curve doesn't get modified, but its amplitude gets modified because of the scaling factor. So this is something known as standing wave, because although we have constructed we have constructed this using traveling waves. This is like sin x curve keeps moving over time, if you notice. If you have a this thing is actually a traveling wave, and because of this kind of combination, you get something called sin x, which is a standing wave, which doesn't move towards right or left, but just stands in the same position and gets modified in the amplitude alone. So that is it. Now I would like to introduce you to superposition principle. I guess you guys would have already heard this many places. So when you have a linear PDE, it's all of this form, let's say. So if there are two different solutions, provided the boundary conditions are like 0, because if u1 satisfies u1 at some boundary, let's say your x lies between a and b, so u1 at a comma 0 is 0, a comma all time actually. For all time, the boundary condition has to remain the same usually, and u2 of a comma t equals 0. Same goes with b. So if these are the boundary conditions for the problem, specific linear PDE that you have, if these are the boundary conditions, and if u1 and u2 are the solutions for this PDE, and if they are the solutions, then they naturally must satisfy the boundary conditions as well. So if you define something like u1 plus u2, the function u1 plus u2 at all x comma t is the sum of u1 at x comma t and u2 at x comma t. It's basically at every point x comma t you are adding up u1 plus u2. That is your new function u1 plus u2. This is some kind of definition. So you define such a function, then this function is also going to be a solution for your PDE. First, let's just check the boundary conditions. If u1 at a comma t is 0 plus u2 at a comma t is also 0. This is also 0 from what you have. So basically, this solution satisfies the boundary conditions. And let's see whether this acts as a solution for the PDE in all regions. It becomes the solution for the PDE at the boundaries. Let's see whether this is the solution for the PDE at all points in the domain. For that, you first know that u1 and u2 are solutions for the PDE at all points in the domain. So they satisfy the PDE. So because of that, you can write this equation u1 t. It's based, you have u1 t equals u1 tt minus c squared u1 xx equals 0, and you also have u2 tt minus c squared u2 xx equals 0. So when you add them both, you get this expression. So from this you can notice that u1 plus u2 tt, and you have this expression, and from this you notice that u1 plus u2 is a solution for the PDE at all points x comma t in the domain. So boundary conditions as so u1 plus u2 is a solution at the boundaries, and u1 plus u2 is also a solution at all points in the domain. So this is what is known as superposition principle. When you know two solutions for a PDE, provided the boundary conditions are 0, because if these are not 0, if these are some say 5 and 10, then obviously this is going to be something else. This is not going to satisfy the boundary condition. I'm sorry. This also has to be 5, because only it's like any solution. Let's say u1, because for any PDE you will have this is the problem. Any solution is anything u1 or u2, whatever, is a solution for this PDE only when that solution satisfies the boundary condition. Let's call that boundary condition to be phi, and at B it has to be 10. Let's say at this point your solution has to be 5, and at this point U has to be 10. So if you add U1, both U1 plus U2 will then be 5 and 5. So this will be 10 here. So now U1 plus U2 does not satisfy this boundary condition, that U has to be 5 at the point A. At the point A we have 10. So only if it is 0, it's possible to maintain the same boundary condition for the new solution as well. So this is what is the superposition principle. Any questions here? Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So let me move on to explaining the characteristics further. So here, until now we saw second order linear PDEs. So now let's move on to first order PDEs just to understand the characteristics better, because there are more to characteristics. We'll see how shocks and expansions are formed in a simple second order nonlinear, in a simple first order nonlinear PDE. So now I'll start with just first order PDE. I'll start with the linear PDE and then slowly I'll be moving to nonlinear PDE. So here the motive is to understand how characteristics behave. So first, this is a definition for what a characteristic is. There is, if this thing, any curve, it's just a curve or a line in the independent. This actually is independent variable because x and t are independent variables. U is a dependent variable. So in this independent variable space, that is xt plane, if you have 2D, it will be x, y, z, t. So you'll have 4 variables actually. And if you have 2D, you'll have x, y, and t. So you'll have 3 variables. So this is for 1D case wherein you have an xt plane, and any curve, say any curve of this form is called a characteristic if it is possible to explicitly define u along this curve. So that is how characteristics are defined. I'll give you more details when we move further. So this is your general PDE, general linear PDE. UT is the this is the conservation law actually. So U is the variable and conserved variable basically, and phi is the flux of this variable U. I'll explain how conservation laws are obtained later on. So now let's just say this is a PDE defined over x and t. This domain actually. This is our domain for this PDE, and this is our initial condition. So for such a PDE, is it possible to find a curve or a set of curves along which it's possible to define U explicitly. So that is what, so if we are able to find those curves, then those are characteristics curves, and along those characteristic curves, we'll be able to define U. So now let me start with a simple advection equation, which is, this is linear equation. C is a constant here. So it's ut plus cux equals 0. And this is your domain. And this is your initial condition. So now I told you that for a characteristic, when you are able to draw a curve, it becomes one dimensional. That is, x also becomes dependent on t. So along this curve, the equation of this curve will be like some x plus something x is a function of t. That will be this equation of this. That will be the equation for this curve. So it's basically dependent on just t. X is dependent on t. So you have this thing. So now, if you are able to find a solution along this curve, then that will be u of x of t comma t. So along this curve, you're just differentiating this curve with respect to time. By chain rule, it becomes this dou u by dou t plus dou u by dou x into dx by dt. Now let's just compare this equation with 1, which is our PDE itself. So if we compare, then we'll have d by dt of u of x comma t equals 0 if dx by dt and equals c. Because if you notice, this equation is same as this equation except for dx by dt and c. If dx by dt equals c, then they are both same equations, and since we have an equal to 0 here, we'll have this d by dt of this term solution equals 0. So along dx by dt equals c, this ODE is valid. So from this ODE, it will be possible to explicitly find the solution for u, and from this ODE, it will be possible to find the equation for our characteristics. So it's basic. From this, we are finding it to be x minus ct equals constant. So these are our characteristic curves. So let's say it starts from origin. Let's say now this is x minus ct equals 0, which is basically x equals ct. And at this point, if you start here, x naught is the intercept. So your characteristic equation is x minus ct equals x naught. So these are this x minus ct equals some constant curves. And this is drawn specifically for c greater than 0. For c less than 0, the curves will have a negative slope instead of positive slope. So that is reference. So now along these curves, if we use this PDE holds. So from this PDE, we can find a solution explicitly for u. And that is basically u is constant along the characteristic, because from this PDE we get u equals constant. So along these straight characteristics, u equals constant. So if you notice, we already know the initial condition from the given problem. U at x0, x comma 0 equals some function u naught of x, and we call that is defined at whole of this x-axis at t equals 0. So now let's consider just this characteristic, and at this characteristic, you know u at x naught comma 0 equals u naught of x naught. So now if you for any general point x comma t in this characteristic, let's say this point, you'll have u of x comma t equals any point here. From this equation, if you notice, x equals x naught plus ct comma t. So that is what I've written here. And from this, if we solve this equation, we'll know that u is constant along the characteristic. So what do we do is u at x comma t is equal to u naught of, if we know if there is a value over here, if there is a value defined over here, and that value has to, if there is a value for u defined over here, and that value has to hold for all points in the characteristic actually. So that is what is written here. So for any general point x comma t, your solution is actually u naught of x naught itself. That is what it was. The solution is going to be the same as same it had been for t equals 0 at x naught. So if u at this x comma t equals u naught of x naught, and that x naught is defined as x minus ct. So this is our solution. U of x comma t equals u naught of x minus ct. So this is how solution is defined. Now we are able to explicitly find the solution just by using the initial condition itself. U at x comma t is equal to the initial condition at x minus ct. So now suppose if we had a square wave at t equals 0, which is the blue wave that I've drawn. This is the blue. which is actually this blue wave. This is the initial condition. So now if we have a square wave at t equals 0, what will happen to it as time goes on? I have drawn it for c greater than 0. That is for characteristics with the positive slope. So in that case, as the solution, let's say if you have something defined like this over here, it just moves right along with the characteristic, because the characteristics have at what the characteristic says that what the solution was at time t equals 0 moves towards right over time. So this is what the characteristic says. So so if you notice, the solution for any time t greater than 0 is going to be something that is towards the right of this initial condition. So actually the square wave just moves towards right over time. Did you get it? Any doubts here? Any questions or doubts at this point? Can someone answer me?
Yes, ma'am. I have a small doubt regarding the right part of the slide, ma'am. The square wave moved towards right and left. You told something like green and blue line, right? I couldn't understand, ma'am. Can you repeat that one small thing?
So if you notice the characteristic, they are slanted towards right, isn't it? So anything that is, if you notice over time, if something that is u at this point x becomes u at some point farther away towards right. If you consider this slanting line, u's solution is going to be the same along this line. That is what we inferred from the solution, the problem that we have done, right? So solution is going to be same along this line. So let's say this is your initial condition. Let's say you had some quantity like u equals 1 by 2. Then u is going to be 1 by 2 for the whole of this slanting line. That is, over time, x changes. X moves, this slanting line moves towards right over time. If you just freeze this at some time, let's say at, okay, you have something that is here at x moves to some x plus some quantity x at a different time, right? Let me, okay. So let's say you have at t equals 0, you have 0 defined here and 1 defined for here. Let's say this is 1 comma 0 and 0 defined over here. So your square wave is now like, your square wave is now this, right? At t equals 0. So now if you go to some other time, this is some time t greater than 0. In that case, what will happen to this square wave? So in whole of this region up till here, it will be 0, because up till this square wave, let me, this is one region. let's in this region u is going to be 0. U is going to be 0, and in this region it's possible for us to separate this domain into 3 different regions. Here also u is going to be 0, here u is going to be 1. This was our initial condition, right? 0, 1, 0 at t equals 0. So now anything along these characteristics, the solution remain constant. That means since this, are you getting this now? Up till this, are you getting, or am I not clear?
I'm getting now, ma'am.
Okay. So now as it moves at some time t greater than 0, you can notice that so now let me draw it separately. Call it this is u and x. So now 0 is going to be for this region 0 actually goes when we look at the x at which for some time t and for some x it's going to be here, that point is going to be here. So let's see now your square wave has actually moved, that is u equals 0 has moved somewhat towards right, and this because of this region you'll have u equals 1 here, and because of this movement you will have u equals 0. So just because the characteristics are slanted towards right, your solution is moving towards right. Is it clear, or are there any further doubts?
It's clear, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So similarly, if your characteristics are have negative slope, the solution will move towards left. This is for a simple advection equation. This solution is actually for a simple advection equation. Square wave is just this u naught of x, some u naught of x. This u naught of x can be anything now, not just square wave. It can be any complicated function. Whatever complicated function you take as initial condition, it will either move towards right or left depending on whether c is positive or negative. So that is for a simple linear advection equation. So now this equation is homogeneous. We have something equal to 0 here. So now let's just take it to be a non-homogeneous equation. Let's just say we have f of x of t comma t. So this is some function of x and t. Other things are same. We have x and the domain is same, and your initial condition is some general function u naught of x. You are not doing it specifically for any initial condition. Just for pictorial representation, I showed you with the square wave. Previously, whatever the initial condition would have been, it would have moved either towards right or left. So now you again have some initial condition. Now for this non-homogeneous advection equation, similarly, along a characteristic, we told that it must be possible to define u explicitly. So now along a characteristic, if it is possible to define u explicitly, then that will be u of x of t comma t. So now we are just taking a derivative of that over time, and by chain rule we again have this form. Now let's compare this with this equation too. So in that case, we'll have du by dt, this is du by dt, this equals f along dx by dt equals 0, c. Because this and this are same except for dx by dt and c. So if dx by dt equals c, then this equation is equal to this equation. So this has to be equal to f of x comma t. So now you have got du by dt equals f along dx by dt equals c. From this ODE, we can evaluate the equation for characteristics. And from this ODE, we can find the solution for U. This is similar to the previous thing. Previously, we had 0 instead of f. So previously, U was constant along the characteristic. Now, because we have an f over here, U is no more going to be a constant along characteristic. U will be some explicit function of x and t along the characteristic x minus ct equals x naught. So now we can find this using this initial value problem. Here capital U equals this u small u of x comma t. We just write this equation here equals f of x comma t. And when we have this is the initial condition. U at time t equals 0 equals u naught of x naught. This is only a function of t now. Because u of x of t comma t, x is a function of t. So if you notice in detail, it's going to be just a function of t. So we have written u capital U as a function of t. This need not always be done because it's always known anyways. You can either take chain rule or you can just write it as only a function of t. It's up to us. So now let's do an example based on this non-homogeneous advection equation, wherein we again have taken some simple equation with f of x comma t equals 1. This is not a function of x comma t, this is just some constant, but still it's some non-homogeneity. It's not 0. So x and t are defined over some domain, and we have this initial condition u at x comma 0 equals tan inverse of x. So that is our problem. Now let's from the characteristic, usually what we do, the same thing that we do usually is taking derivative of u along the characteristic. We get this, and when we compare these both, we'll have d by dt of u equals 1 along dx by dt must be equal to 4. Along this curve, we get d by dt of u equals 1. So we got two different ODEs. So this ODE when solved gives the characteristic. This ODE when solved gives the solution along the characteristic. So solving this ODE, it's like d by dt of capital U of t equals 1 with initial condition as the same initial condition we had. U of 0 equals tan inverse of x naught. So now solving this, we'll have u equals t plus a, and substituting the initial condition, we get this. We find a value for a, and we get u of t equals the same. This is equal to t plus tan inverse of x naught. So x naught is equal to x minus 4t. So let's say if we have tan inverse of x as the initial condition and tan inverse of x minus 4t as some function of some u at time t. In that case, the solution will just be moving towards right or left. Anything which is like this, which is of this form, x minus 4t, x plus 4t, or x plus ct, x minus 80, will be traveling towards either left or right, because the characteristics we defined were of this form, right? So when that characteristic itself comes as a solution, so it means that the things move either towards right or left. So that was for the previous case. Now we have that plus t. So when we do that, the solution along with moving towards right or left gets moved up or down. It's like let's do it for a simple square wave case. Let's say we had an initial square wave. Now, if this t were not there, it would just keep moving up and down. This is u and this is our x. This is at t equals 0. At a different time, t greater than 0, this square wave, along with moving towards right, it will also move up, because the function gets added by t. At every point, we have some addition of t. So it moves along with movement towards right, it also moves upward. Based on this quantity, if this quantity is negative, based on whether this quantity is negative or positive again. If we had a -1 here instead of +1, it will move downwards. Again, if we have some complicated function, the behavior will again be complicated. It will not just be up and down. There'll be more complicated movements. So now this is with non-homogeneous advection equation. Like any doubts up till here? Any doubts, or can I move forward?
Continue, ma'am.
Okay. So now until now we have seen linear advection equation and non-homogeneous advection equation. So now again we consider some homogeneous equation, but instead of just advection, we take c of x, c to be some function of x and t. C is no more a constant. So what will happen now? So again, it's defined over the same domain. We have similar initial condition. So like before, we take derivative of u with respect to t. So we get this expression. So because of this equal to 0, this will be equal to 0 along dx by dt equals c of x comma t, because now we have dx by dt equals c of x comma t instead of c. So this when solved, this initial value problem when solved, we get the characteristic, and this problem when solved, we get the solution along the characteristic. So you get this because this is equal to 0, you know the solution will remain constant along the characteristic, because this is what we saw for the linear advection case. The solution is constant along the characteristic, but the characteristic is no more straight line like before, because it's some function of x and t. This has to be solved. Depending on what the function is, the slope of your characteristic will differ at different points. If it had been just c, it's just a straight line, but now it's there is a different slope at different point of the curve. So it's no more a straight line, it's going to be some function which is dependent on the c of x comma t. So now let's see an example for this thing. Here your c of x comma t is tx, and you have taken domain x and t usual domain, and you have taken some initial condition which is 1 by 1 plus x squared. So now we are trying to we are trying to find the equation for characteristic, which is by solving this initial value problem. So we get dx by x equals t dt, and upon solving this, we get this, and this solution, this value for a when put here, we get this expression. We actually get this as the equation for characteristic. This is x equals x naught e power t squared by 2. X naught is some initial condition. So at every point, so characteristics are actually not straight lines here. They are dependent on both x naught and t basically, and that is an exponential function. For this problem again, it may be different for different problems. For this problem, we have taken tx. So for this, we got this kind of a characteristic. So along this characteristic, we know the solution is going to be u naught of x naught, which is it's like along the characteristic we told when we solved this initial value problem. This problem has to be solved, right? Upon solving this, we get this as the solution. So u of x comma t equals u naught of x naught. So along the characteristic u of x comma t, we get u naught of x naught, which is 1 over 1 plus x naught squared. And from this, we know the expression for x naught, we substitute it here to get x by e power t squared by 2. Which is basically So let's say you have some t here, x here, and you have curves. They need not be parallel as well. So any point x comma t here is dependent on this is the intercept x naught. So you know the value of u at this point, u at which is u naught of x naught. U naught is just to say that it is an initial condition. You know the value of u at this point. So it's going to be same along the whole of this curve. So that is so this curve will have some expression, right? That is x equals x naught e power t squared by 2. So for u of x comma t along this curve, you have gotten 1 plus x naught square. So in order to bring it to the form of x and t, so we just find the value, x naught in terms of x and t itself, because to write this as an explicit equation of x and t alone, it's possible to write now. Depending on the initial condition, it's possible for us to write. Okay. So now, until now, we have seen linear advection equation with homogeneous and non-homogeneous cases. Then we have seen linear equations with coefficients, with non-constant coefficients actually. So now we'll see nonlinear equations, nonlinear conservation laws. Here C is not just a function of x and t, it's a function of the dependent variable itself, which is u. So now this equation is nonlinear. So again, it's dependent, the domain is defined and the initial conditions are defined. So here the characteristic will be like before, this dx by dt equals whatever it's here. That is the equation of characteristic. So this is your characteristic thing. With initial condition x of 0 equals x naught. But here if you notice, dx by dt equals c, which is a function of u of x comma t. Actually our motive is to find this. But in the process of finding, we need this. Okay. So what are we going to do now? We don't know this actually for now. So okay, let's say along the character, since we have this equal to 0, it's possible to say d by dt of u equals 0 along dx by dt equals this. So this is now valid along the curve dx by dt equals c. So we know along the curve u of x comma t equals u naught of x naught. U naught of x naught is known from the initial condition. You know the function u naught. So at some specific x, you know what the function is going to be. So basically, you know the solution. Initially, we told that we are finding this, but since we have this expression and since it's possible to relate these two along the characteristic, and we know what the solution is along the characteristic, it is going to be the same as the initial condition. The solution is going to be the same as the initial condition along the characteristic. So now this thing that we had over here now turns into this expression, which is the same thing with u of x comma t replaced by u naught of x naught, because we know it now. Initially we argued that we don't know, and now we justified why we know it. Is it fine? Any questions? Any doubts or questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Okay, let me continue then. So you have this problem. So this is the equation for our characteristic now, with the initial condition x at 0 equals x naught. So now C is a function of some u naught, and which is again a function of some x naught. X naught is a constant. So basically C is a constant. So x equals, it's not, C is not a function of t anymore. So it's just x equals C into t plus some constant a. So we just use the initial conditions to find this constant, and we get the equation for the characteristic as this. So now these are straight lines, because this is C into C of u naught of x naught is a constant. So these are straight lines, but still at different x naught, C is going to be different. Like for different x naught, we'll have a different C. So unlike the linear advection case where the characteristics were not just straight lines but parallel straight lines, here they won't be parallel. That is because for different x naught, we have a different C.
Yes, ma'am. Like, I have a small doubt.
Okay.
You told for different x naught we'll be having different c, right? But for one given example or for one given function, the x naught should also be the same, right?
X naught is just your function initial condition is defined for any x basically. U naught is u naught is some function. It may be just e power x or 1 over 1 plus x squared, whatever. X naught is like, you know, let me not. So when you have a characteristic, this is t and this is x. And for every x, you have some u different, right, based on these equations.
Yes, ma'am.
And at every point, these are those small points, and these points are x naughts actually. Because I have a different x naught for one. These curves, the characteristic curves rising from x naught may not be same, may not have the same expression. So we just identify them with x naught instead of x.
Okay, so two different x naughts can also be
Yeah.
different. I mean,
At
like x naught can be at 1 also, x naught can be at 2 also. That's what you're saying, right, ma'am?
yes, it's
Oh,
just some identification for the initial condition itself.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's say at t equal, we are now solving for one characteristic. When we do this, when we are putting this initial condition, we are only solving for one of these x naughts. We are just using some general notation x naught because we don't want to make it specific to just 1, 2, 3 and all. We want to make it general, so we just write it as x naught. It's like at every x of x at, like x is again a function of t, right, along the characteristic. So if at some t, if at 0, for this curve x at t equals 0 is for this curve. Mm. For this curve, x at t equals 0 is this x naught. And for a different curve, x at t equals 0 is some other thing. So we are just trying to make it general. But here when we say x at 0 equals x naught, we are actually talking about one specific characteristic. But we are not exactly saying which characteristic it is it by not mentioning x naught equals 1, x naught equals 2, like that. We are still keeping it general, but we are doing it for one specific characteristic. Is it fine?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is done just to identify one characteristic and to make the find the solution along that characteristic alone. So along that characteristic, we'll know what we'll know u naught of x naught. Because from here we can substitute some specific x naught to find u naught of x naught, and we can say along this characteristic u is going to be same, and along this characteristic u is going to be same. It's like let's say u had been 1 at this point and 2 at this point. So now u will be 1 along this characteristic and u will be 2 along this characteristic. and only when this equals 0. Otherwise, we'll have u equals some function of x comma t, which won't be. It's like characteristic is, we say something as characteristic only when it is possible for us to define u as some explicit function of x and t. So that is what we are attempting to do. So now we have the equation for characteristic, and we have the solution u along that characteristic. So now what did we do? Okay, we have found the equation for characteristic, but when we have c as a function of u, the characteristic are straight lines, but they are not parallel like the previous case. Now I want to show you this. For this case, where for this thing, if we draw the characteristic, depending on what the x naught is, they are going to be straight lines again. You will have different characteristics. Now again, at this different point, your slope may be different. Depending on different x naught, you will have different slopes, because c is dependent on x naught. But still it's a curve, it's a straight line, because c is a constant along the curve. Got it? So now you can find.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now you can find the solution along these characteristics. So, okay. This is a simple, this equation is known as Invisit-Burgess equation. Let's see an example for this specific, for this case of nonlinear conservation laws, wherein c is a function of u. So we have taken c to be u itself. This is the Invisit-Burgess equation. And again here x is defined over some domain, and we have this initial condition u at x comma 0 equals 0 for x less than or equal to 0, and e power minus 1 by x for x greater than 0, which is going to be like so let me do it for u and x at t equals 0. For all x less than 0, it's going to be just 0. Basically this for x less than or equal to 0, and again e power minus 1 by x will go some way. E power x is this. I think it will go. Is it right? Is this the curve for e power minus 1 by x? Yeah. Okay, whatever. So there is going to be some function over here. So now let's what we have done previously, we have found an equation for the characteristic, and we have found how to find the solution along the characteristic. So now here we are trying to find the equation for the characteristic, which is by using this equation. This is an ODE. So if we solve this ODE, we'll get the equation for our characteristic. So that is going to be dx by dt equals c of u naught of x naught. C is again u only. So substituting u naught of x naught in place of u, we'll get u naught of x naught itself. So now to solve this, let's just integrate, and upon substitution of initial condition, we'll have this. This will be our equation for the characteristic. So now we have found the equation for characteristics, and which at different x naught we'll have a different form for the characteristic. So that is like for uh, for x naught less than or equal to 0, so now let's draw the characteristics alone in xt plane. So that is going to be straight lines for x naught less than or equal to 0, and slanting lines for u naught of for x naught greater than 0, because if you notice, the initial condition is 0 for x less than or equal to 0. So if you see, for all points here, u is 0. U at t equals 0 is 0. So u naught of x naught is basically 0 here. So this term goes off. You only have x equals x naught. So that becomes straight lines. So these are equations for x equals x naught. These are straight line equations. And on the right side, if you notice, we have e power minus 1 by x defined. So that when substituted in place of u naught of x naught, we'll have e power minus 1 by x naught t plus x naught. So this is our equation for characteristics on the right side. So at different x naught, we'll have different values for values of slope, and based on this intercept x naught, you'll have different slopes. So at each point, you have different slopes. So that's what you're seeing here. Now, since we had equal to 0 here, d by dt of u will be equal to 0 along the characteristic. So u is constant along the characteristic. So that will be u at any general x comma t will be equal to u naught of x naught along the characteristic. So that is equal to u naught of x naught is defined, we know it, which we saw what u naught of x is, which is 0. So here all x has to be replaced by just x naught. So we have 0 for x less than or equal to 0, and we have e power minus 1 by x naught for x greater than 0. And here x naught is this expression. This is just from here, this equation of characteristic, just taking that out, we get this form. We just write it in this form because we do not want to leave it in terms of x naught itself. We just want to convert it back to x and t. That's why we write it like this. But to pictorially see, this is our in the tx plane. These are our characteristics, and solution is going to be constant along each of these characteristics. That is what we evidently see from this equation. So now,
Ma'am, regarding the graph after, I mean, in the first quadrant, the lines should be in the opposite direction, right?
e power minus 1 by x naught.
Yes, yes, ma'am, because it comes like a hyperbola. I mean, e power minus 1 by x.
E power minus, okay, let me draw it. E power minus x comes like this, right?
Yes, ma'am, sort of hyperbola. So the slope is
This e power minus 1 by x, so it sort of will be like this, right? How will it be?
I think the first one you drew. Yes, ma'am. Y will be infinite at x equals to 0.
These are all e power x's are all positive. X is a power positive here. E power 1 by x naught is going to be at each and every point when we move towards left side, 1 by x naught is going to increase, right? So
Yes, ma'am. But for the graph of e power minus 1 by x, the slope will be, I mean, the angle will be more than 90. So if we are adding x naught for that, I think it will slightly lean towards the left. I'm not sure, but I
X
just
naught
thought.
serves as the intercept.
Yes, ma'am. X naught is just intercept.
This is the slope.
Yeah.
Uh, as we move towards left, 1 by x naught is going to increase. So e power minus some increasing quantity is going to be here. So when we have e power minus some increasing quantity, the slope actually decreases, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So slope with respect to x and t. This is x and this is t. This is drawn with respect to t and x. So the slope, in the sense that you'll have more inclination here when you have e power minus some increased quantity. When we move towards right, when we move towards left, there is more inclination. This actually means that there is more inclination. This equation means that there is more inclination towards x and less towards t, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what we have done, right? If we see, the angle here is small and angle here is big as we have moved towards left.
Yes, ma'am. I think I got confused.
To x
Yeah.
and t instead of t and t.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. Yeah.
This has
I
been
think I
done.
got confused.
So now we have seen linear advection equation. Then we have seen linear advection equation with both homogeneous and non-homogeneous cases. Then we saw then we saw an advection equation again, which is whose constant is a function of x and t alone. Then we saw nonlinear advection equation, which is basically an inviscid Burgers equation. Now for this, what we have seen is the characteristics are straight. For this kind of nonlinear equation, the characteristics are straight lines, but they need not be parallel. But and the solution, since we have an equal to 0 here, we'll have d by dt of u equals 0, and we'll have u as constant along the characteristics. So for this kind of an inviscid Burgers equation, uh, we have characteristics that are non-parallel but are straight lines, and we have u constant along the characteristic. So this is what we have inferred till now. But there are cases where characteristics are not straight lines as well. When we have c as a function of x and t, you'll have characteristics that are not straight lines. Now I'll be showing you the formation of shocks and all using using this inviscid Burgers equation itself. Actually, students, you guys would have learned in aerospace or gas dynamics courses about the formation of shocks and expansion waves. That is actually done for physical equations like Euler's equation, Navier-Stokes equation, etc. But here we'll be doing it for a simple scalar equation. Just by using characteristics, we'll see the formation of discontinuities and formation of expansion regions. So just by using this inviscid Burgers equation, it's possible to study all those things in detail. So we'll see how these characteristics, which are straight lines but are not parallel, lead to the formation of shocks. So let's say this. Now I would like to introduce you to some concept known as gradient catastrophe, which is this. Basically, you have in the TX plane you have characteristics. So these are straight lines but are not parallel. So when they are not parallel, there is a possibility for them to intersect. So the characteristics are intersecting in this region. So but you know, along a characteristic, it was possible for us to define u as some function of x and t. For inviscid Burgers case, it was just u equals constant along the characteristic. So we notice along this characteristic u is some constant, and along this characteristic u is some constant. So when we have such kind of intersections in this region, at some point you will have multiple characteristics passing through it. For a single point you have multiple characteristics passing through it. So which u will you take? Because will you take u corresponding to this characteristic or u corresponding to this characteristic? You end up in having multiple values. So that is one problem. Next, let's see what gradient catastrophe actually is. So now we till now we have seen tx plots separately and ux plots separately for different times. So now it's a three-dimensional plot. We have t in one axis and we have x in the other, and we have u here. So we in the tx plane it was possible for us to draw characteristics. So we have these blue lines are characteristics. So along the characteristic u is going to remain constant. That's what we told, right? So this length, these are just some lengths. Let's say it's just u1. All of them are u1. And these are just some constant, again, a different constant. All of them are u2. Because along characteristic, the solution remains constant. So this is what we have when the characteristics are not converging towards each other. It's possible for us to draw some function u as a function of x for different times. These curves are this is u as a function of x at t equals 0. This is u as a function of x at some different t. This again is u as a function of x at some other different t. So you have this kind of plot. So now let's see what happens when the characteristics are converging. These are blue lines that are converging. These are characteristics in the tx plane actually that are converging. So now again we have some u1 here, some u1. This is all u1. Everything is u1, same u1. This is all u2. Here you have this u2. So if we notice, as the characteristics are converging, the curve ux curve here it's quite smooth. Here it's quite smooth, and at some other higher time the slope is becoming high, and again when it converges the slope becomes very large. As it converges the slope goes to infinity. So this is what is known as gradient catastrophe. So slope in the sense I was talking about dou u by dou x of the curve, because here here actually we are seeing u as a function of x at some specific time t equals 0. Here we are seeing u as a function of x at some other different time. So at every time it's possible for us to get dou u by dou x from these curves. We can notice that the slopes keep increasing over time. So as it reaches this converging point of the characteristics, the slope goes to infinity. So this is what is called as gradient catastrophe. So now let's just take some simple Gaussian curve. And this is at t equals 0. You have a Gaussian. So u as a function of x at t equals 0. We have taken a Gaussian curve. So now here at this region, u is going to be small. As you go up, u is going to be large. So u is actually the speed, right? U of x comma t. Let's just call it the speed. In our conservation law, let's just call u to be the velocity of movement of the initial thing. This is our initial curve u of x, and as it moves, this point goes to a farther distance than this point, right? So now here that point maps to here, and this point actually maps to here. So this point also moves, but to a smaller distance. This point moves actually to a farther distance. Similarly, the same goes with this and this. This point moves farther and this point moves slower. As it moves that way, the left side of the Gaussian curve just expands. And there will be some point wherein all of these things are in the straight line. right? Each of these points have move with different velocity, and there will be some point wherein this moves at some velocity, and all of them are just like the straight line. That wave is known as shock wave. And after you cross this, again you can still cross. You can still this is say at some time t1, and this is at say at some time t2, and this is at some time t3. So now again this will keep moving further. This will go fast and this point will go slow. So this becomes a still larger expansion wave. And if you notice, this point goes faster, this point goes slower. So this goes and this overtakes, this faster overtakes this curve, this point. So now you have something like this, a profile like this. So if you look at this region where I have marked in red, if you look at this line, now at a specific x, you have two different values of u. So it results in multiple values for u at a single point. So as we saw in the first class, the definition of function and all, u is at any point in the domain should have just one point in the codomain, right? Codomain is u, domain is x. So, but here u x at some specific x has two different points in u. So it's no more a function of x. So after gradient catastrophe, multiple valuedness occurs. So this is what I wanted to convey. Now breaking time is something. I'd like to introduce you to this concept, which is known as breaking time, which is basically the earliest time at which gradient catastrophe occurs. Here, if we notice, at this time t, the gradient catastrophe has occurred. So how to identify that time will be seen now. So I'll first I'll show you how to identify that time at which the earliest breakdown of gradient catastrophe occurs. That is the earliest time at which dou u by dou x goes to infinity. That is what is known as the breaking time. So now you have a conservation law. Okay, so you have a conservation law, which is ut plus u of u, ux equals 0, and that is defined over some domain of independent variables, and you have this initial condition. So now you get to find the solution at x comma t. By using the method of characteristics, you get to draw the characteristics and you get to find the solution along the characteristics. So now at any point x comma t, the solution is determined by u naught of x naught, where x naught equals x naught of x comma t. X naught again is a function of x and t. This determines the starting point of the curve. And okay, so this point x naught is a function of let's say you have some point x comma t, and the characteristic passing through this will be traced back down to this x naught. So for any point you can determine if you move along the characteristic passing through that point, you can reach the intercept x naught. So now let's this is the solution along the characteristics. So an x naught is again a function of x and t, because it depends on if you start with some other x comma t, you may land up in some other x naught, because the characteristic passing through that may be different. So x naught is actually a function of x and t. So now using this, you have the solution along the characteristics. Now differentiating this with respect to x gives this expression, which is u naught prime. This is basically dou u naught by dou x naught into dou x naught by dou x. So and also we know the characteristic equation is given by this: x equals c of u naught of x naught into t plus x naught. So now differentiating that with respect to x, you get this. By chain rule, you get, not by chain, t is not a function of x is actually a function of t. So we take t outside, and this is a function of x naught. So we just differentiate it with respect to x naught, ordinary differentiation, because we know c is only a function of x naught. So we just differentiate c with respect to x naught, and we know x naught is a function of x. So that there comes a partial derivative into dou x naught by dou x. Then again this gets differentiated. So this is 1, dou x by dou x is 1, and now here you get to take dou x naught by dou x outside as common, and you get some expression here. So now substituting this value of dou x naught by dou x over here, what you get ux equals u naught prime of x naught into 1 by this quantity 1 plus t into some differentiation. So now I told that the breaking time is the earliest time at which ux goes to infinity. Sorry, this is ux going to 0. This is ux going to infinity. So ux actually goes to infinity when this term in the denominator goes to 0. So let's say we have different times, okay? Let's say for all times greater than or equal to 0, and for all x naught, I would like to draw here. You have some t, you have some x, and there are going to be many x naughts, like many curves that they might go closer, but which curve actually lead to ux going to infinity is what we have to identify. So now let's say for all time and for all x naught, if this is always greater than or equal to 0, that is if this term is always greater than or equal to 0, because time is going to be always positive. If this derivative term is always greater than or equal to 0, then the denominator actually never goes to 0. This denominator actually never goes to 0, because this is always positive, this is always positive, and 1 is a positive quantity that never goes to 0. So no gradient catastrophe, because if this term goes to 0, derivative term goes to 0, I mean both becomes negative, then there is a possibility of the denominator going to 0. So that is when gradient catastrophe can occur. So in the first case, when for all t greater than 0 and for all x naught, if derivative is positive, then the denominator never goes to 0 and gradient catastrophe never occurs. But if there exists some x naught, if for some certain x naught, not necessarily for all x naught, but for some x naught, if this derivative is less than or equal to 0, then there is a possibility for gradient catastrophe. That is, if this derivative is greater than or equal to 0, then the denominator may go to 0 as t approaches minus 1 by the derivative quantity. That is when gradient catastrophe occurs. Now, to find the earliest time at which gradient catastrophe occurs, that is when t is still greater than or equal to 0, but the least possible t for which gradient catastrophe occurs is the x naught, for which this d by dx naught, this term, the least possible t for which this can go to 0 is when this quantity becomes most negative. right? So if that is the case, we need to identify when, for which x naught, this quantity, this derivative becomes most negative. So that is what we are trying to do. That I've written a statement over here. The value of x naught, which results in earliest blow-up time, is that which makes this derivative the most negative. So now, using that x naught, we are evaluating the breaking time. Tb equals this thing, because this again is a function of x naught. Which x naught will we use? So we need to identify that x naught for which this derivative becomes most negative, and using that x naught, we evaluate this breaking time. So that is how breaking time is evaluated. So any doubts here? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So now let me move on to an example wherein we again consider the implicit Burgers equation over this domain, and we have this initial condition: 1 for x less than 0, 1 minus x for x between 0 and 1, and 1 for x greater than 0. So now we need to again find the characteristics for this thing. So that is here our c is just u. So dx by dt is going to be u naught of x naught. So and with the initial condition x of 0 equals x naught. So from this the characteristic curves are identified. So now if you notice, for x naught less than for any x naught less than 0, you have u naught to be 1. So your equation will be x equals t plus x naught for x naught less than 0. So so here the curve, here for anything, for all x less than 0, your characteristics are slanting towards the positive side. You can still draw characteristics. I have only considered from -2. You can still draw. The domain is actually minus infinity to infinity. I'm just showing the regions where there is a difference. So here, all to the left side, it's all going to be positive slope, and to and now again consider for x less than 1, you have u naught of x naught to be 0. So your characteristic will be just x equals x naught. So from x in this region, for x naught greater than 1, your characteristics are going to be just x equals x naught, just straight lines. So now this in the middle region, that is between 0 to 1, it's 1 minus x. So for x naught between 0 and 1, you have u naught of x naught as 1 minus x naught. So your equation then becomes x equals 1 minus x naught into t plus x naught. So you basically have t minus you have some, this is the slope, this will be the intercept. So at every point you have the slope as 1 minus x naught. So over here in this region, the slope keeps varying in this region. So if you notice this region, the slope is all varying. That is the whole of this region, the slope is varying over varying as 1 minus x naught. So this is the this is the plot of the characteristics. Now I've shown the plot with more characteristics. Here the characteristics are visible individually. You know, characteristics can be drawn at each and every point of in the real number space actually. So I've made it more dense. I've drawn more lines. That's all. The line equations are still the same. Here the things are more dense. So, and also I've increased the time here. Here it's just only between 0 and 1. Here it's from 0 to 2. We can in the first plot, you're seeing only in this region, with less characteristics. In the second, in this, so here you have, after they intersect, you can see how there are many characteristics. Here at like before t less than when t is less than 1, every x comma t has just one characteristic passing through it. But after t greater than 1, you have more at every point in this region you have many characteristics passing through that point. So at this point the gradient catastrophe actually occurs. So now um, let's just until now what we have seen is to find the solution only before t. For finding solution after t, you need to go to shock wave solutions and all. I'll probably teach that in the next class. I think there's no enough time. So for just t less than 1, you can find the solution, because at if when for t less than 1, at each and every point x comma t here in this region, you have just one characteristic passing through that point. So the solution is going to be unique at that point, and that solution can be found by using this ODE. So this ODE actually, that is u equals u naught of x naught. So u equals constant basically. So that is what we are seeing. So this is a three-dimensional plot. Here we have x, t, and u. So this is the solution. The first blue curve is the solution at t equals 0. It's 1 for x less than 0, and 0 for 1 x greater than 1, and 1 minus x for x between 0 and 1. Now the characteristics in this region are in the region between these characteristics are actually moving towards right. The characteristic in this region, basically. The characteristic in this region are actually moving towards right. So all the solution here will move towards right. That is, u equals 1 will keep moving towards right. And the characteristics are straight lines in this region. So like whatever that is here will remain here itself, will not move anywhere over time. That's what you're seeing up till 1. I'm only talking about the solutions up till 1, t equals 1. I'm not, this is only up till this region we are going to talk. For solutions in this region, I need to introduce you to shock wave solutions. I'll introduce that in the next class. So let's just see how the solution behaves for t less than 0 with what we have learned till now. So basically for x less than 0, the solution is moving. U equals 1 is actually moving. That is what we see from the characteristics. And for x greater than 1, u equals 0 is the solution, and that remains there itself because the characteristics are just straight. Here the characteristics are moving towards right, but with some form of slope. So this 1 minus x is actually moving. You can see that it has moved somewhat, but the way it moves depends at each and every point. The movement is different. So the slope doesn't get retained the same. The slope here is not retained. The slope actually gets reduced. I mean, it goes to it. The slope doesn't get retained. It just gets contracted. So and at some point at t equals 0, at t equals 1, you have just this solution here and this solution here, and they are all going and merging at one point, and everything that is between 0 and 1 are merging at just one point. So you have this for x less than it's basically u equals 1 here and u equals 0 here. So at this point you'll only have for t equals 1, you'll only have u equals 1 and u equals 0 and a straight line. There is a big discontinuity. The slope gets contracted and slowly forms as a discontinuity at t equals 1. Sorry, I've done all these in So at t equals 1, you have a discontinuity. You have u equals 1 here and u equals 0 here, and you have this discontinuity. That's what is evident from the characteristic curve as well at t equals 1. So now for the solutions beyond t equals 1, we'll have to get introduced to shockwave solutions. I think this also, let's see it in the next class. Any doubts? Or can I explain this thing also up to the breaking time? Actually, there is no breaking time here. The initial condition itself breaks. So for this, we need shockwave solutions. So any doubts? Any doubts? Are the contents understandable? Okay. So let's just stop here and we'll get into shockwave solutions in the next class.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.